Welcome to C3 In This Together, 30 Minutes in Our Own Voice Mental Health Series. In honor of May being Mental Health Awareness Month, we will be hearing from someone with a lived experience who's coping, managing, and navigating mental health. My hope throughout this series is that together we will be the generation that ends the silence, the shame, and the stigma of mental health. That's been our focus for the last few weeks, and we're so excited that we get to continue that this week. In fact, this segment is the last in our series, so we're so grateful that you've joined us. But today, our guest is Jennifer Ayers-Moore, who is a mental health advocate and author, and she is driven by her love for her brother, Nathaniel Ayers. And you'll hear much more about this in a little while. But Nathaniel is also known famously as the Soloist. In fact, his story became a book and a movie starring Jamie Foxx and Robert Downey Jr. We're so glad today and honored that we have Miss Jennifer with us. Miss Jennifer, thank you for taking the time to be a part of this series. We know that your schedule is super busy, but we're just so honored that you've joined us for the last segment in our series. So welcome to 30 Minutes in Our Own Voice. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, more than what I've just shared, and then, of course, tell us your story.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to be here. And I guess I'll just jump right in. And you did mention quite a bit of what this is about. As indicated, my brother's name is Nathaniel Ayers, and he has a mental health condition known as schizophrenia. And to be honest with you, that was a very difficult challenge for my entire family because no one saw it coming. When we were growing up, my brother and I were extremely close. He was someone that I looked up to, that I wanted to hang around all the time. And I'm sure I got totally on his nerves and I was a pest to him, but he was a great big brother and he still is. And he had the desire to be a musician, which came when he was about like in the 7th grade. And when he was in the 7th grade, he was introduced to classical music, and none of our family really knew about classical music. Oh. So it was strange with that alone, just trying to get to know what he was getting into. But as soon as he got into classical music, he dove in 100%, and there was no turning back. We really didn't notice any changes in him, except for the fact that music was all he was about. He was pretty much a loner during that time because none of his friends, of course, knew about classical music. And he accelerated so fast that his junior high school orchestra teacher recommended that he go to the Cleveland Music Institute. Wow. And so he did that, and that's where he met Mr. Harry Barnoff, who was a graduate of Juilliard School in New York. Wow. And he was quite impressed. In fact, we still speak with Harry Barnoff, and Harry Barnoff is now probably like 92 years old. Wow. Yeah, and he's an amazing man. He remembers a lot that happened with my brother, and he was there to try to support my mother because he was just as shocked as everyone else to see how it was like, one day my brother was okay and then the next day he wasn't. So he tried to be support for my mom as much as he could. But during that time, nobody really knew a lot about mental health or mental illness or mental health condition. So when we went to pick my brother up is when we noticed. One summer, we went to pick him up from Juilliard, drove from Cleveland to New York. And I was so excited to see him. And when we got there, the person that came out of the apartment wasn't who we took, who we dropped off at school. My brother was a type of guy that was a dapper guy. I mean, he was coordinated all the time. He was Well, he was a pretty vain guy. He would comb his hair all the time, and he was always matching sweater, pants, shoes. He was just a very coordinated, very neat guy. So when he came out of his apartment that particular day, I noticed right away like a gaze in his eye. His eyes were really open like saucers. Like I don't even know if he blinked or not. Wow. But I was young, so at the time, and it was frightening to me. So he was talking just really nervously and just kind of moving around, and it was just very unusual to see him act that way. And when we got in the car, I didn't really know how to handle it. It just wasn't what I expected. So as embarrassed as I am to admit, I pretended like I was asleep all the way home because I didn't know what to say to him. And he literally talked from the time we hit the ground rolling from New York to Cleveland. And I would peek out of the corner of my eye to see how my mother was doing. And I could see that she was just devastated, not knowing what to do. She didn't really understand what was going on. And my stepfather that was driving, he really did a great job to keep the conversation going, to keep the atmosphere as cool as possible. And as soon as we got home, my mother started calling everybody, trying to get some help for my brother and her son, her only son. And she worked relentlessly to try to find some help. And during that time, it just really wasn't available. And she tried a lot of things, and even to the point of shock treatment. And I just happened to be there with her when we went to that appointment. And when my brother was first diagnosed, or when he first became ill, he was ready and willing to try anything because he knew he wasn't who he was before. He knew something was going on with him. So he went through with the shock treatment. They wouldn't let us back there. And when he came out, I think my mother was even more hurt because he came out, I guess, for lack of better words, worse than he did when he went in. And that was years ago. So it was totally different then. And from that point on, it seemed as though he just didn't act the same. And he had many, many episodes that we didn't know what to do. Some episodes that we had to call the police about. And, we didn't know if that was right or wrong. But she made it a point to go around to all the police stations within our area to say, hey, this is my son. He's sick. Please be aware. Let us know if you see him. And people at that time really tried to cooperate with her. And they would give him a ride home sometime or let him stop at the police station and we'd go pick him up. But, those are small things that happen. And but then there's the part where people didn't understand what was going on with him. And somebody might have snatched an instrument from him or punched him in the jaw or, just being cruel. So it was many years of not knowing from day to day what to expect. One day we're laughing and we're talking, and the next day, he could say something very hurtful. And my mother took a lot of that. And she took a lot of that, but she never, ever gave up. And she went to the point so far as to when she realized that it was difficult for her to really help him, she started going to visit places that helped people with a mental health condition. And she would bring home ladies for lunch. Mm-hmm. My mother was a cosmetologist. She had a beauty shop called Flo's Beauty Lounge. And she would bring ladies home to the house. She wouldn't take them to the shop, but bring them home to have lunch and, maybe give them a sweater or something to give them an opportunity to leave. And eventually she ended up meeting a lady by the name of Miss Pyle, who ended up living with us for 2 years. And I was I was shocked. And I said, Mom, why would you do this? And we have Nathaniel. And her words to me were, I am doing for Miss Powell what I'd like for someone to do for Tony. And Tony is what she called my brother. And after a while, I got it because we did learn a lot from Miss Powell. You know, Miss Powell didn't have any family members that visited her except maybe one time. And so that was an experience, and to show you that my mother really, really tried very hard to find an answers or to find a solution or something that would help. And during that time, it just wasn't a lot that was available. And so it was many years of that type of situation, not knowing where he was, getting a phone call from him. He's in Colorado at a music festival, or New York, or, you know, you name it, he was there. And how he got there, I don't even know half the time. How he, probably the bus, but, you know, he didn't let his health stop him from doing what he loved to do, and that was to be around music and play music. And so currently he's doing a whole lot better.
Wow.
But it took a very, very long time to come to grips with it. It took a very long time for me to allow him to be who he is.
Wow. Wow.
And it took a long time for me to step back and stop pressuring him to be somebody else.
Wow.
You know? And I would do things like invite him to dinner, and knowing what he was going to have on, I just automatically assumed that it would be something that I didn't like, you know. So I would get him a jacket maybe the day before. And when I would go pick him up, the jacket would have musical notes written all over it, or, you know, something about Beethoven and Mozart, or some musician that he admired. And I just had to eventually realize that, hey, if I don't back up, you know, I'm not going to be any good to him.
Wow.
And I did. It was very hard to push back and just wait. But that's what I did. And it turned out to be a good situation for me. And the fact that Steve Lopez ran into him in California in Pershing Square was an extra bonus. And now he has support. I'm able to call him. He's able to call me. If I can't reach him, I can reach out to Steve and other people, which really shows you that support is key to mental health.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And tell us a little bit more, just before I go to the next question. And I also want to highlight something about your mom that I think it's important for our viewing audience to hear.
Sure.
I'll highlight in a moment, but tell us a little bit more about that encounter with Steve Lopez and how it led to the Soloist. Of course, many who are watching, they're going to remember that movie, and those who may have not have heard about that movie, our hope is that you would go back and maybe on YouTube, or maybe you could tell us where we could find that. But tell us a little bit more, briefly, before we move to our next question.
Sure.
About the Soloist and that experience.
Yeah, well, as I had stated before, my brother was on the streets at the time. After my mom passed in 2000, my brother sort of just disappeared. I mean, he would do that routinely, but he would call. This time, I didn't hear from him for 5 years.
Wow.
So I really didn't know where he was. I knew he was going to go to California to try to locate our biological father. That we knew was in California. And he did find him. And when he got there, our sister, half sister, who we really don't know that well, was there as well. And my father was on his way to come and visit me until I realized that my brother had gone there to see him, and I told him, no, you can't leave him there like that. You have to cancel your flight. I'm sorry, but, don't leave him there like that. And he ended up staying a little longer. And my brother, I felt okay because he was with our sister. I mean, I struggle with that because I don't know them, but I know who they are.
Right.
Um, but yeah, he stayed with her for a little while, but then somehow he ended up on Skid Row. And I understand, she wasn't familiar with how to deal with a person that has a mental health condition. So he ended up on Skid Row. And I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but yeah, it's tough. Skid Row is tough. You saw some of it in the movie. That was mild compared to what I saw with my natural eye. It's very, very hard. So he was there sleeping on the street with his cart, and he was there for a while before Steve Lopez just happened to run into him in Persian Square playing the 2-string violin. And he knew that this person couldn't have learned how to play the violin like that on his own. He felt that he was classically trained. So he did stop to talk to him and, ask him a lot of questions. And that's how he found out that he went to Juilliard. And Steve will be the first to tell you that his initial intent was to write a story. He didn't have any intention on getting to know my brother. But after he started talking to him, he will tell you that my brother helped him as much as he helped my brother. So it became one story. One story became, 20, and then a book. And then, of course, after the stories were very public and people were talking about it, several movie producers contacted him. And because of Steve, I was involved in it. And I was involved in consulting for the film. And that's really how it came about. As far as my brother, he had no interest in a film at all. In fact, he hadn't seen it until recently. He would listen to it because because of his health, he couldn't see the images on the screen. But now, because he's in better condition, he's seen it, he's watched it. So that's huge.
Thank you for that. I'm going to highlight something that you said about your mom, which might seem insignificant to someone who does not have a family member who's living with a mental illness. But what your mom did by going around to the various police stations and letting them know that she has a son with a mental illness and to be aware of that, I really wanted to highlight that because perhaps some others who are watching, you have a family member that has a mental illness. I would encourage you, if for any reason you have to contact the local authorities in your area, I'm going to invite you to request what's called a certified trained, a CIT trained police officer, which is a crisis intervention trained certified police officer. And what that will do is that will alert them that the individual that you're dealing with, you need to see them through the lens of mental health or mental health awareness and mental illness. So I really wanted to highlight that, and I'm not sure who that will benefit, but as you were speaking, of course, being that's part of my job. I train police officers in crisis intervention training that they would be aware of how to manage those with a mental illness. So I just wanted to highlight that for somebody watching. Wanted to ask you, what would you say to someone or a loved one who is managing mental illness? What would you say to someone watching?
To the person that has a mental health condition?
To the person or to a loved one or a loved one. So to the person, someone, or a loved one who's managing mental illness.
Yeah. Well, there's no situation that's alike. Mm-hmm. None of them are identical. But if you know that you have a loved one that their behaviors seem to have changed, or it's obvious that it's changed. For me, the thing that I had to learn to do the hard way was to kind of back up and to kind of find out what's wrong, or just try to generate a conversation. Like, is there anything I can do to help you? Or, what are you feeling? and give them the opportunity to really talk and share and not be judgmental. You cannot jump out of the gate judging and saying things like, oh, you're being lazy. You don't want to do anything. Oh, you could do better. There's nobody that wants to have a mental health condition.
Yes.
So, just kind of stand by. And while you're standing by, gather information. One thing that really helped me was NAMI. The first contact that I had with NAMI was actually in California. And I spoke with a lot of NAMI members there who shared a lot of information with me. And I got involved with NAMI here in Georgia, and it was very helpful as well to have people to kind of talk to. And all NAMIs are not the same, it depends on where you are. But there are some NAMIs that reach out a little more, and others that are a little more reserved. It just depends.
Wow.
And I've met some very, very wonderful people that shared some things with me to kind of help me as a caregiver and as a sibling to get through with it. And like I said, the biggest thing that I've done was to take care of myself.
Wow.
And the stress that I was carrying, trying to make my brother be something or someone that he's not, was not for him. It was for me. So it ended up putting pressure on me,
Wow.
Stressing me out.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I just want to highlight really quickly, you mentioned this 2 or 3 times about backing up and also not seeing, trying to make your brother, be something that he's not. In your book that we'll talk about at the end, you mentioned that about not crossing the line, right? And I want to highlight that for someone listening. If you have a loved one with a mental illness, you'll hear from Jennifer as she closes out and talking about her book, but she mentions that really passionately, that a line that none of us should cross is trying to make the person be something that they're not through our eyes. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think that is so important as we're helping others to manage their condition. Of course, you talked about being non-judgmental.
Yeah.
Really important for many who are watching who you may not have an experience with mental illness. This may be the first time you're hearing about it through this series. We want to highlight what Jennifer said about being non-judgmental. And I really want to highlight and echo this part. No one chooses a mental illness, right? Just like no one chooses a medical condition. No one
Exactly.
says, I want to be mentally ill. So
Yes.
be aware of that. Well, as we begin to wrap up, I wish I could have you for an hour and a half. But this has been really rich, a wealth of resources. But just in our final time here, really quickly, and I think, you said this, but just really quickly, tell us, what do you want people to know about taking care of our own mental health? Of course, you said a lot about being a caregiver, but as we are in May being Mental Health Awareness Month, what should we know about taking care of our own mental health?
Well, there's 2 things I want to say about that. First, as a person that has to care for someone that has a mental health condition, there's something that I always think about, and that's when you're on an airplane and they tell you about putting your own mask on first before you try to help somebody else. I mean, you have to be able to breathe and get air to be able to help someone else get air and breathe. If you can't do it, then you certainly can't help them. So that's kind of what I mean about backing up. And then, if because I don't have a mental health condition, I can't really pinpoint something specific that someone should do. However, I have worked with and talked to a lot of people that share with me about their mental health. And one thing that seems to really help a lot is to speak about it, talk about it, get with other people that are going through the same thing, or other people that are like the NAMI support groups. That's one way to do it is to get in there and to talk about, what you've gone through, and don't try to hide it. That seems to be very, very effective for people that have a diagnosis that they're talking about. Just as today, as I mentioned earlier to you, that I did a presentation with another group earlier, and a lady was there that told me what her diagnosis was, and she got very emotional because she appreciated being in the moment where she could talk about some of the things that she had gone through. And she felt like she didn't have the kind of support that she needed to be able to share that with. So just those few moments allowed her to express how she felt not really having anybody to share that with.
Wow.
So it really helped her out a lot. And she said she felt really good. And so just imagine being a part of a support group that you can go to weekly or monthly to share, your experiences, and your experience may not be as tough as theirs. So sharing those experiences together, it means a lot to be able to speak out and not have to hold that in.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing those. Well, Lady Jennifer, thank you again. And before we close, how can people reach out to you? Tell us a little bit more about your foundation, and tell us about this book here, right? I have my copy, but tell us a little bit more.
Thank you for getting that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, since you have a copy, please know that if you order the book, which is on Amazon, it's entitled Hear the Music, Memoirs from the Sister of the Soloist. Like I said, it's on Amazon. And all the proceeds from that book goes toward getting socks for a campaign I've started called Socks On.
Wow.
And I did that because I remember seeing my brother who walked everywhere. And I went to visit him, and he sat down and took his shoes off. And I hope this doesn't gross you out or anything like that, but he took his shoes off and his feet were worn out because of no socks. And after I saw that, I made sure that he had socks for days. His apartment was probably just overwhelmed with socks, and I didn't want him to be the only one to have that convenience. So I said that I was going to make every dime go toward buying socks for agencies. And I'm not in a position where I can buy thousands of socks, but I can get a couple of hundred of pairs of socks for an agency.
Okay.
And I haven't done it for many yet, but I'm still striving to make it happen. And I'm trying to get in contact with agencies or stores that will help me with that.
Wow.
So it's very important. I did send some to an agency called Breakthrough House in Topeka, Kansas. And one guy said he sat there and took off his dirty socks and put on some new socks. And he just started crying because he said that his feet felt so much better.
Wow.
And he was so happy to have clean new socks. That changed the way he felt in that moment.
Yes.
A pair of socks. And my brother is the same way, to have, clean clothing, to get a package from me. He loves that,
Wow.
so
Oh, thank you for that. And tell us about your website. Where can we find you on your website?
Sure. The website is friendsofayers.org.
Wow.
Of course, www.friendsofayers.org.
Wow.
And a lot of the information that I spoke about, the socks on, the link to the book is on the website. My podcast links are there, as well as the blog.
Wow,
so,
great.
The podcast series, I haven't done one in a while, but I've got some people lined up for it. But the ones that are on there are, pretty good, where people are sharing their story.
Wow. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to put that on the screen so our friends can go and be a part of helping to come alongside others as they manage this journey of mental illness and mental health. Ms. Jennifer, thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your friendship and as we journey in this together in our work.
Thank you.
And I do also want to let you know that C3 in this together, we're going to be sending a donation to you.
Thank you.
Can continue your work. We want to be a part of that as well. A fitting way to close, my friends, those of you who've been joining us, this is the final in our series, 30 Minutes in Our Own Voice mental health series. And we felt like a fitting way to close out this series would be for you to view a clip of Nathaniel performing on CBS 60 Minutes program. So you're going to see that at the end. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for joining us for this series. Again, our hope is that together we will end the silence, the shame, and the stigma of mental illness. We also want to remind you for more resources about mental health, we invite you to view our webpage, go onto our webpage, website, c3inthistogether.com. You'll see that on the screen. We also want to encourage you to take our 21-day Thankfulness Challenge, as well as our NextGen Hope Challenge as well. So you'll see that on the website. And lastly, we wanted to mention what we have on our website is our Hope Pill, right? That's something that we use in therapy, and it's a reminder to take your daily dose of hope. My friends, thank you again for joining us. Miss Jennifer, thank you, and I'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Always
thank
a
you.
Pleasure. Yeah.
We love your warm spirit, and just thank you for all that you do in this.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. And I also have I still have my DVD that you personally gave to me. I cherish that thing. And I have a picture of us holding that thing up together. So many blessings to you. And we cannot end this program without speaking blessings to Nathaniel, speaking well wishes, speaking hope. He is not just a statistic or a name. Right. He is a person, right?
Yes, he is. Yes,
so
he is.
We don't want this to be just about a program, but we want this to be about people. So I cannot end this session without again saying blessings to you, of course, to your family, but to Nathaniel, we speak well wishes, blessings, hope, resiliency, recovery, whatever he needs.
Thank you.
Make that for him. My friends, thank you again for joining us. The final in our series, and we hope to see you sometime soon as we do another series surrounding mental health. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for this clip of our friend Nathaniel sharing his gift with the world. Thank you, Miss Jennifer.
Thank you.
Can we do trumpet music now?
Sure.
I don't know if the trumpet, I was thinking in my dreamy, hazy daisy world that the piano and the trumpets are not going to coordinate.
We'll see. I don't see why not.
I've been looking.
right.